Welcome to Meet the Candidate. Today we're joined by mayoral candidate Julia Wheatley. Welcome, Julia.
Thanks, Chris. Good to be here.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, Julia.
A little bit about myself. I have been here in Queen Creek for about 15 years. My husband and I moved here before we had children. Now we have four, ranging from 12 to 8. And we love Queen Creek. We had been here just a few years when I decided to get into local government. But yeah, it's interesting. I reflect about when we first were deciding where to really put our roots. And back then we were driving and it was on a it turned into a dirt road and then it just ended. And you're in farm field but you see these gorgeous horses with their owners riding by, and just totally pristine, just beautiful image in my mind that I still remember, 15 years later. But so there's definitely something unique in Queen Creek that drew us out here initially, and so it's been amazing to see it grow into what it's become today. But professionally, I am a mortgage loan officer. And then I've been on the town council for 12 years.
That's great. So you mentioned a couple of things there that we want to touch on. So normally I would ask about your experiences in the town and what have you done in the town, but you've been on the town council since 2010.
Yes, yeah. So we've seen a lot of changes in those years, and really exciting changes, and a lot of growth come to Queen Creek. Our little secret's kind of out. But different boards and commissions throughout the town, economic development, parks and recreation, some regional boards and committees as well to represent the town. So
instead of getting into details about all of those boards and commissions, because obviously you've seen the entire gamut, tell us about the hardest part. So from 2010 to now, you've seen a tremendous amount of growth. We went through the recession, and the town had to shrink its employee workforce quite a bit, pull back programs.
Yeah, it's a good perspective, honestly, that span. Because you're right, when I first came on, 2010 is when we just had to start downsizing. And so we cut back by about 40%. So it's a significant cut to an organization, and it was very, very difficult. And Queen Creek was, as we know, one of the areas that was hit the hardest. And so just trying to navigate through that to the point now where we're growing so rapidly, and things are quite opposite. Our revenues are really strong. And so it's, I was thinking about the successes that were big successes back then, like, like our splash pad. Our first splash pad was a huge deal. It still is. I love that splash pad. But, and then to go to now we have Mansell Carter Oasis Park. We're building our new Frontier Family Park. And that will have an aquatic center and a multi-gen. And so it's just exciting to see what's coming, but also recognize how big those wins were back then, or even just transportation projects where our Ellsworth Loop, and what a significant change that meant for everyone traveling and commuting. And now we're looking at our State Route 24 connection and what that's going to do for our residents. So it's all we've had even when times were tough and things were tight, we still had wins, our smaller wins, and now it's just continuing to grow and be more and more successful. And so it's just so exciting because we've worked so hard over the years, and a lot of things people don't recognize, they don't see until they finally, the fruits are there. And it seems like it happened overnight, but it took many, many years of planning and preparation.
Yeah, you mentioned watching the loop, Ellsworth Loop come on, and when we used to get stopped by the trains would stop on Ellsworth Road, and we had no way to get around.
Yep.
Or bringing on those first traffic lights.
Yep.
All really important things when we got rid of those four-way stops. But so there are some who say that we need to build roads even faster. And how do you see that, given your length of service?
Right. I wish I had that magic wand that could just make it immediately. I think one thing that's really important, that education's always key, right? So specifically with roadway projects, there is so much talking about what goes into a project. There is so much that has to be done. Acquiring right-of-way from multiple landowners, doing studies, doing design. I mean, designs from some of these big roadway projects could take 18 months alone. And then when you're acquiring right away from multiple property owners and going through that process, and then actually the construction, and now running into the delays of everything, the COVID and post-COVID. I mean, they're big projects, and I would hope people wouldn't want us to rush them through, right? We want them to be designed appropriately. We want, and so it's a long process. And I think when people realize and how many entities have to work together, and we have great partnerships with Pinal County, Maricopa County, ADOT, Mesa, Gilbert, all of these partnerships, that it's not just our road, it connects with another municipality or another county, and there's so many other things that come into play with it. We're doing them as fast as we can. We definitely don't want every road in Queen Creek under construction, even though it feels like that way. We're very strategic about it. And one thing that our residents always have to keep in mind is we didn't want to overbuild our roads yesterday, knowing that literally the end of the summer we'll have those connections to the State Route 24 that's going to significantly help our roads. And the town saying is better roads ahead. They truly are. And so if we spend an additional 10 million, 100 million building our roads for the capacity right now, and not taking into account that traffic pattern is now going to shift to Meridian, to Signal Butte, to Ironwood, now that we have those connections, then we've overbuilt, and we haven't been fiscally sound with our residents' tax dollars. Transportation has always been a top priority. That is always, we regularly do citizen surveys to see what are the issues, what are the top priorities, what are we not, what are we meeting, and what aren't we meeting? Where do we need to focus more of our attention and efforts? And transportation is always a key area, and so it's not something we take lightly. We're also obviously wanting to bring jobs to Queen Creek so that our residents don't have to commute as far. And again, reducing that demand on our roadways. So it's multiple faceted, right?
There's a lot that goes into that, and we'll talk about jobs in just a minute. But one thing that you mentioned a little bit earlier was the park system, and I think you had served on the Parks and Rec advisory, and they helped develop the plans for the park plans that then eventually come to council. And we have seen Mansell Carter come online, and we are going to see Frontier come online, and finally the Aquatic Center. But there's a contingency in town who may say that parks are not where we should be spending our money. But tell us how you see that. Sure,
absolutely. Like I mentioned, we touched on transportation, a huge priority for myself, for our current council, and another, public safety. And you can't deny that hasn't been a top priority for us. We just started QCPD, and and it was a fantastic move at the right time. We've built 5 fire stations in the last 5 years. So between fire, police services, public safety is very important. Transportation, obviously very important. Securing our water rights, securing a 100-year water supply for our residents living in a desert, huge priority. So those are some of the priorities we've had that our council has focused our attention on. And parks is another thing that's very high as far as what our residents want and desire. And so it's not something that we've focused on immediately. We've done little things, like we talked about the first splash pad and things to add quality of life like that for our residents. It's interesting, my last house that I lived in, we actually lived on the trail. So the trail, the Queen Creek Wash and Trail. So it literally ended in my backyard. And we have view fencing, and so people would just love to just stop and just camp out and hang out. And it's great when you have a pool, right? So, but I will tell you firsthand, that trail is used all the time. And we have people from all over coming in, and they love the that it connects to other Gilbert and other areas of town, and their kids are safe and they can ride or bike or skate or whatever you want to do. And so much use, and people just rave about it. And those are things that set Queen Creek apart. We always talk about we want Queen Creek to be unique. Well, what's different about Queen Creek than any other municipality? To me, that's one of them. And that's what our residents say in those citizen surveys is, and we recently were awarded best place to raise a family, and things like parks and trails are important. And so as over the years, over my tenure, 12 years, we've focused and put our attention into those priorities and protecting our residents. And but we've also collected impact fees to build parks. And we've promised our residents we will build parks. And we can't collect money on a new construction home for parks and not build them. We legally have to utilize those funds within 10 years. And so I just look at Mansell Carter Oasis Park, and what a blessing that has been to our community, and how much people love and adore that park. And statistically, we see 3 times the amount of use as any other municipal park. So many people come and use our parks and our trails, and it's good for our residents, it's good for tourism, and we are, with all of the funds that we've allocated or planned, in just a couple years, we'll be at full build out in our transportation, in our public safety, in our water, wastewater, those things. And when you look at, the best way to look at it is a graph, and it shows everything else. A few years, we're going to be at 100%, and parks are incredibly lacking. So it's something we've told our residents that we will do for them. It's something that they are really asking us for. And at the end of the day, it's great quality of life. You want your residents out recreating, being active, healthy, enjoying our amazing weather. And we're at a point where we need to catch up to what we've promised our residents. So we have to make it a new priority.
You mentioned a lot of accomplishments there. So we've already got in that short time that you've been on council, we've brought on the roadways, the wastewater, the fire department, the police department, and now Mansell Carter and soon East Park, known as Family Frontier Park. It's always been East Park, and
right,
that'll be
I know
hard to
it's
get
hard
used
to,
right? But
yeah.
Having those extra ballparks is going to be incredible. You mentioned the trails, and we haven't talked about that too much. Eventually, the trails, which is part of the parks plan, will be an 11-mile connected loop,
Yeah.
which will allow us to bring in some big marathons, 5Ks, things like that. So it's actually an economic driver
Absolutely.
as well.
Yeah.
Horseshoe Park and Equestrian Center is another one that's gone through a lot of changes over the years, but we're now hosting professional rodeos at, of course, Roots and Boots has expanded and now draws from all over the region. We host Gilbert Days here. So it looks like the parks plans are really coming on board now, and I think the Aquatic Center is going to be another one of those. So we appreciate your work on that.
Yeah, and you touched on ball fields real quick, which is another thing. There's a lot of recreational organizations in town that there's not enough field space for the residents to play here in Queen Creek. And I know I have lots of neighbors and friends that have to go outside to other municipalities to practice, and they're not able to find that space here. So there's a huge demand for our fields.
Yeah, absolutely. I know my own kids at one point, we were practicing in a retention basin, but
Yep, sounds very
you got to
familiar.
do what you got to do.
Yep.
But it'll be great that we're catching up on that. So it sounds like you support the parks plan. One of the things that I mention most often when talking to people is that Queen Creek has done a really good job of planning, and we have our general plan, which tells us where everything is supposed to go: businesses, residential, commercial. And one thing from a chamber's perspective that we like is knowing the stability of that.
Right.
So, and council has done a great job of supporting that. How do you see that going forward? You mentioned that we're getting close to build out in some areas. How do you see that going forward, and how do you feel about the general plan?
The general plan is crucial. It's voter approved, and as a council, we need to honor and respect that. And there is the ability to go through and do applications to change that if it meets as our community ages and changes, and there's different things that come into factor in different circumstances. So you have the ability to look at it. It is a living document that can be changed, but as a voter approved document, it's very well done. I've been able to be part of a couple of those as far as they've gone through before the voters, and it's a great plan. It really is, and it's given us what we have today, and I absolutely respect that.
That's wonderful, because we are getting down to the build-out phase, which is kind of crazy because we're so far ahead of schedule. It was supposed to be a 50-year plan, and I think we're on year 20. But,
Right.
But we also have some areas dedicated towards employment and industrial uses, and we're seeing more and more people wanting to do residential on those. And one area in particular will have a big impact on the airport. So I didn't know if you have any views on the airport and preserving that piece of land. We went through a North Pacific area plan study a couple of years ago, 5 years ago, I think. And so what do you see happening in that north tier?
Yeah, and the airport we're part owner in that, and they're a great partner, and what they bring to the area, even though they're not in Queen Creek, what they bring to the area as far as economic development speaking and industrial development is fantastic. And that is something, they have their overflight area that needs to be protected. And from my point of view, that needs to be honored. And we do, in the general plan, we have it laid out for industrial uses. And again, those are to bring jobs to our area so our residents don't always have to commute 45 minutes, an hour each way. That's what truly develops and builds out a sustainable community, right? And so to me, it's important that we protect those areas for for our community, but also that partnership with the airport.
Yeah, a tremendous amount of job growth coming from that south side of
Absolutely.
the airport, just north of our boundaries, but eventually we will pick up some of that additional
Right,
space.
exactly. And it's great that Queen Creek is able to be part of those discussions and be at the table. And like you mentioned, it's not immediately in Queen Creek right now, but we will see the spillover effect.
You're running unopposed, so most likely our next mayor. What do you see as some of the biggest issues coming up in your first couple of years?
It's probably the same that it has been over the past 12 years, is just managing the growth. We're seeing growth at a rate that other communities don't see, but it's so tremendous when you look at other communities in other states that are losing residents, and we're gaining them so quickly, and just trying to manage that growth and meet these new residents' expectations. But I'm really proud of the things we've done fiscally, as far as fiscally responsible as we have been. We just received a bond rating increase, and so for such a young community, to have a bond rating that's one less than the highest you could possibly attain is a huge thing for us. We're saving 25% of all of our revenues. All of our planning is done based off of the other 75%. We've fully funded our pension plans, and that's completely unheard of. There's not another city or town in the state, not very many in the country, but we're doing a lot of things fiscally. We've, over the last 2 years, reduced our property tax rate, so we're able to provide these services without increasing taxes or the cost to our residents. And so I want to make sure that we maintain that and deliver those high quality services while also keeping the cost to our residents down. And we're really just doing the best we can, and trying to make Queen Creek the best place that we can. And so I'm excited. I'm really excited about the future of Queen Creek, and just all the groundwork that's been laid from before I got on council to what I know we've done.
I think, there's not too many places where you get to watch it all get built out of the ground while you're here.
Right.
But you've mentioned fiscal responsibility several times. That is evident in the dividends that we're seeing across the board. One thing that we also talk about is business-friendly atmosphere. And what does that mean to you, and how do you see that going forward under your leadership?
Good. And a word you mentioned before was it security or stability or?
It was the stability that comes from knowing the plan.
Yes, with the general plan. And that is key with development and key with bringing in employment. And if someone's going to come in here and develop and spend potentially millions of dollars, they want that stability, that predictability. And so as a council, it is important. It is important to give them that. Yeah.
Very good. Anything that we haven't touched on that you want to share with the community?
No, I mean, that's all great questions, and it's just very exciting to see what the next 4 years or 10 years are going to be like for Queen Creek. And it is, you don't get to be a part of this where a community develops and matures right before your eyes. And I love that we are still that small town where any business comes people are excited, and I love going to ribbon cuttings because we tell those business owners, this is going to be your best location. And they're like, yeah. But and then they see the numbers and they're like, you're right. Like, this outperforms any other location because we have such, it's like a camaraderie, it's such support. And I don't think that'll ever change. And I hope our business community sees that and feels that, the community aspect. And I love that aspect of it. And you know, we've over the last couple of years, we've learned a lot, and there's been a lot of divisiveness, and I just hope we can. I feel like Queen Creek has really kind of come out of that almost unscathed, but hopefully we can learn from something from that and just bond together as a community. And we all have this in common, right? We love Queen Creek, and we're all just trying to make it a better place. Like, I don't believe anyone has any ill intention, but we're all trying to do our part to make it a better place, and just coming together and having that conversation is crucial. And I think that is key from my perspective as a town council member and as a mayor, that our residents know that communication is both ways, and that we're available and accessible. And so it's an exciting time for Queen Creek.
I think that's one of the most unique features, the sense of community, the accessibility, and the availability of information. You can go onto the town's website and find just about anything that you want. So, but we really appreciate your time. We thank you for coming here and speaking with us, and we wish you the best of luck.
Thank you so much, Chris. Appreciate it.